we've had enough, right? I'm a second generation head. My dad was in prison when I was born for a minor cannabis misdemeanor. I didn't know him until I was 5, right? How can you say that taking a person into jail for half an ounce of cannabis is worth that trauma?
What up, everybody? Welcome to the Trip Sitting Podcast, where we explore what it means to be human. For everybody that is here right now, I want to thank you for giving yourself the time to listen to my podcast and maybe learn something, whatever reason that you're here. I very much appreciate it. I know that there are a lot of things that you can choose to do. So the fact that you are choosing to be here with me is truly, truly amazing. This week's guest is Joe Phillips, who is just a phenomenal person who I've built this friendship with over the last couple months. And it's been really, really amazing watching the things that he's doing and just seeing him grow. And we talk about just his whole life and what's gotten him to be here. And he's just a very authentic and genuine individual. So this is a really great episode. A huge shout out to Mushmore for sponsoring this episode. Mushmore unlocks the power of its members through microdosing. They have some absolutely amazing microdosing products, all these different blends that they have for specific moods that you're trying to get in, using all different types of functional mushrooms as well. And they have an incredible community to go along with it. So it's not just about the products, it's about the community that you become a part of. And they got a great Telegram channel, and that's how you can find out how to actually get the products. If you're interested also in maybe some macro products, they got some stuff for you. Wink, wink. But yeah, be sure to check out the Telegram channel. It's going to be in the footnotes of this podcast. And yeah, for all of your microdosing needs, or just a really great community to tap into. Also, make sure you're following the Trip Sitting Podcast at tripsitting.blog on Instagram and TikTok, and give us a follow or subscribe to whatever podcast streaming platform you're listening to this on. And if you feel so called, give it a rating too, so we get in front of more viewers. So I believe that is it for all the promos that I got. So here is Joe. Yeah, man, it's special to just be able to like hold space for the people you love, like regardless of what that is. And we've like built this virtual friendship now and relationship over the last 3 or 4 months or something right now. I think it feels like. And yeah, it's been so fucking cool, man. It really has been following you and getting to know you and seeing your story. And now you have your first book that you are about to launch, The Emerald City.
It's not mine.
Yeah.
I was here, I got to watch it come, it's it was a very interesting thing, and very serendipitous that, like, I don't tend to reach out about anything like that, and it was just, I don't know, I just felt that how personable you were and how real you were. I was like, this is somebody I could just have a good conversation about this with, somebody that is rooted in these worlds, that might have a bearing, but has also come from this culture, right? We've come from inside this. So, there's almost a disconnect sometimes with, traditional wisdom. Like, we're rootless, our traditional wisdom was just wiped out by Catholicism, so in Britain. So we've got stories of Taliesin, twice born, who drank of a sacred cup and died and got born again as a higher entity, and that's like a Welsh old myth that kind of got re-Christianized. But
Oh shit, I've never even heard of that before.
Yeah, that's it's there, and it's just peeling back the layers. And I'm not a historian per se. I just I followed that path. I heard similar language, and I was like, that's synonymous with this culture and that one, because yeah. So anyway.
you are an artist and like a creative, and like whether you intentionally knew it or not, like it seems like that's always been the path that you've gone. Like, you started like your adult life as a tattoo artist, right?
Yeah, for sure. So, I left home a week after my 16th birthday. I went, and there must be something about the number 16 because there was 16 schools up until then. And then a week after my birthday, I was kind of fending for myself and came down to South Wales. There was music a lot, so there's creativity there. And then through music, I joined like a local music college. Um, got fascinated by this idea of tattooing. When I was 10, sorry, a little bit of backstory. When I was
Hmm.
10, I was around an old school biker tattooist, and he used to give me like carbon paper to play with, and some classic. There's a guy called Ian of Reading who's just a hero within British tattoo culture. He was like a real artist, one of the first ones to do big scenic back pieces of galleons, like from the perspective being in the galleon. He was just a force. He like way ahead of his time. So I had that around me, and the guy who was showing me was just on such a high level that, like, as a child, I'm never going to be that good, And so I kind of got into music culture, and I was playing bass, and that was always how I like would make my friends, and like people from the counterculture kind of stick together. There was a lot more love and less posturing when like you're all kind of there, vulnerable in a band room or whatever. So I
Hmm.
kind of connected through that, and then. Yeah, so my ex girlfriend got my name tattooed and guilt tripped me into getting hers done. I saw the guy, honestly, the guy used a stencil, and I was like,
Yeah.
what? Well, so you put the stencil on the skin and you just draw around the stencil. I was like, all my life, I thought you'd need to be as good as this guy Dobbin, right? And right, I'm going to be a tattooist. It was literally like overnight.
And that
So
was your wait, that was your first tattoo was of your ex-girlfriend?
yeah,
That's
it's
funny as
it's
hell.
still around. It's underneath like an old news story. It's yeah, but and the guy as well, like the guy I went to was like the most ratchet guy, and it was like a stall in a marketplace in Cardiff.
Hmm.
And I asked him about an apprenticeship, and his honest advice was, well, just buy a kit off eBay, tattoo your friends, and bring some pictures in, and I'll give you some pointers because I can't have you here right now. But we got on, and so that was the best advice I had at the time, right? So I did. That's exactly what
Nice.
I did. Got on with it. I tattooed myself an upside down smiley face because to me it was the right way up, and I stood up, and it was just like, so that was my first one on myself. A couple of my cousins had little bits that they won't let me cover up.
Hmm.
It's like bad stuff that they're like, no, Joe, we know you were bad once upon a time. So it's like,
Yeah. You have to be
um,
constantly reminded of this.
yeah, thanks, Reese. Nice one, brother. So that's been it was great going back then, and I think the guy picked up on how keen I was because he ended up going away and closing his business down, and he sold me a bunch of his gear, and had the opportunity to open up my own shop. Well, I was working with another guy who had 10 years experience, but he didn't really know what he was doing. There
Hmm.
was a shop owner who wasn't a tattooist who just wanted artists in. I'd been tattooing for about a year at the time from home, doing little bits, keeping it clean. I was always taught from this guy in that studio, you make sure you keep it clean and you have an autoclave. And, it wasn't high spec stuff, but we never had any infections and, we got through. So, not the advice I would give to people, but that was my way in, And to be honest, I couldn't have done a 3-year apprenticeship. I left home at 16, right?
Yeah.
So the advice that was good for me, I was responsible with it, Anyway, I got into that first shop, was out 5 nights a week, giving out business cards on the town, getting into work, sleeping in the shop, just all that kind of stuff, living the party lifestyle, and opened up a shop. And then there was a point where like I realized that I could be better. I'd had other staff members come in and out, and I got to about 3 years in, and I was like, I just need to be around bigger people.
Hmm.
And starting to know all my clients as well and their families, and realizing the consequences. You tattoo someone and it just reverberates on. So
Hmm.
I just wanted to get better. So from there, went to the Channel Islands and lived in Guernsey on this literal treasure island. It's like a tax haven. It's a satellite of the City of London. It's one of those type of places. Very beautiful to look at. Very strange undercurrent of culture, weird power games and stuff. So I
Mm-hmm.
lasted about 10 months there, and just came back to Barry, and I've been back here for 11 years. And you know, when I was in Guernsey, I'd had a kid, my eldest. He's 12 now. He's awesome, Felix. But me and the mother, it wasn't to be. We came to Wales as a family together, and she ended up going back to Guernsey, and
Mm-hmm.
taking him with her is complicated. I don't
Life
want
is
to.
complicated, man. Life really, really,
Yeah,
it
it is.
it gets you.
I,
Um,
I'm not going to slander her. I'm not going to do anything like the way that I see that this is my first permanent record, right? So, and there's a couple of things I want to get straight. And one of the first things I don't want to do is disparage somebody who has serious mental health issues.
mhm.
So it's very much a case of being sensitive to that. But I was left in a position where I just was like, how am I meant to
Yeah,
deal with
what I mean, like,
this to my
what
son?
was that like on you? Like, having obviously your
Yeah,
baby's mother leave
yeah,
with the baby, and then you're now left to kind of deal with that.
yeah, man. Like, I, I wasn't allowed to have visits with him to visit Wales. I was allowed FaceTime every day for a while. We were kind of amicable, and then there was like weird money games, and I had to visit Guernsey. So it's a 4 hour drive, a 4 hour ferry, and then he could be there for a few hours and come back. But I'd guest spot over there. I'd work there a little bit and come back, and we made it work for the first year. And then after that, for 7 years, he was with me for a week at a time,
Mm,
like every 7 weeks or so. And we'd have
okay.
like long summer. So like I actually worked all my life around his visits, and then kind of in between the visits, I'd have like a week of learning or a convention, and I'd kind of feed my career a little bit and just build something up with the vision of like, well, one day we'll have a nice solid base, and kind of I always wanted to provide him stability if ever he needed it, or if he's always had his own bedroom with me. He's always had that here, and I love him so much. Um, but yeah, so dealing with all of that, I wasn't coping very well. I was deeply depressed. Just like radical acceptance is an amazing Buddhist teaching that I was like really trying to take on board and just like really live it, and just
Hmm.
like I'd probably mask a lot with cannabis, and then I'd heard probably back in 2008, 2009 on the psychedelic salon. What by the way, the psychedelic salon, like all the Palenque Norte lecture series. I'm sure, like many of your listeners, are familiar with that community. But that was for somebody that has come from the counterculture. I'd heard of Erowid. By the way, my dad's like an old school head, right? So
Hmm.
he's been around it forever, and
Yeah,
so like I've never really had the squirmishness. Though I did stay away from everything until I was gone 16 because
yeah.
you know I, it wasn't for
You,
me.
yeah, it's like you don't want to do that around your parents. It's like I want to know that I'm in my own space before I feel comfortable doing any of that shit.
Yeah, right. So, but I didn't have the same kind of stigma with a lot of these things. So, and then I'd been out picking mushrooms at 7 years old, in fields with him, like, oh, it's the ones with the little nipple on the top, because Welsh mushrooms are very different, actually. They're very, actually,
Oh hell yeah, you got some?
yeah, they're called psilocybe semilanceata, and
Okay.
they're very small and dainty, but like when they dry out, they're just so delicate.
Oh wow, those are little guys. Those are so
Yeah.
cute.
So you pick them by the foul, like there's a,
Oh wow.
and they're gross. They're gross.
Yeah.
They're so stringy, and
Did you pick those, or did you get those from somebody that like grows them?
I'm in a position at the moment, like with my job, and because of the conversations that I have with people in there, that I don't ever go without. It's
Yeah.
like it comes to my door, and like
Hmm.
I always try and put it to good use. And I pay it forward if ever I get surplus. It's like trying to help
Yeah.
other people out, but it's not. you know, might want to edit all that out, just incriminate myself for doing
Ah,
it.
it's
But
no
anyway,
worries.
a little insight into the little the witches caps that we have over here, so I never had that stigma, and then going to the Amazon sounded amazing, and really kind of being around a facilitator really appealed to me. And then I just thought, why don't I get back to what my culture would have used?
Mm-hmm.
This is what my ancestors would have used, and there was a desire to reconnect with that and to see if I could use that. And in Amsterdam, we can fly to Amsterdam within about 2 hours from where I am, so I could go in there, go into a smart shop, get truffles, which are psilocybin truffles, and I got some golden teachers, and
Mm-hmm.
I spoke to the guy behind the counter. I said, "Look, I've tried some. I'd done a bit of acid by then, but it was very much like, oh, this is a funny thing to do, And
Yeah,
with my buddy walking down to the beach. My buddy who's 50 years old, by the way,
got it.
and we're both in the sun, like this up, like put our specs on, just like trying to you know, be cool, look like we're not on drugs,
Mm-hmm.
that. Anyway, so this was a couple of years later, and I was really trying to go into it with purpose, and I'd had an amazing time, and basically learned how to channel. Right, so during this session, I'd taken a tracing paper sketchbook, and I was drawing like very loose blue pencil lines. But
Mm-hmm.
when I noticed a pattern, I would kind of work into that a bit, and then it would knot up, and I'd have like an auditory hallucination going, "Oh bloody hell, he's caught up again."
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as I'd loosen up, it was like, "Yes, well done, mate." Like fully cheering me on. I'm just in the corner of like the Hill Street Blues, like a cafe in Amsterdam, and I'm just
Yeah, like it's just you basically talking to yourself.
yeah, and I hope I wasn't talking. Like there were other people. There was definitely an auditory element to it, and so when I realized I was kind of forcing it, I would just flip the page, and then
Mm-hmm.
I'd do another bit, be very loose, and the second I'd kind of attach to something, it'd be like, oh, there he goes again, and
Mm-hmm.
I ended up working my way through the whole book, right? And then when I closed the book, could see all of these layers of loose lines, but there was like a pattern and an order through the paper.
Mm-hmm.
And because I've gone one way, it's like, how is there an order backwards?
Yeah.
And I was like, right. So there's something that comes through you when you surrender the need to fuck around with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that was it. And from there, I followed like a decade of following that feeling of just giving myself the time and space to just surrender um, into that. And
So like when you sit down to paint or sketch or anything, like you don't have any sort of idea of like what you're gonna put on that paper beforehand. Like you, for the most part, are you just like putting it and you're like, all right, this is just gonna end up being something, and like you don't know what that's gonna be.
yeah, that's the part of the exciting part of it, right? So that becomes a happening then, right? So the moment of creation, and I've departed from human meaning making, right? So when I wanted to do something creative after working to a strict tattoo brief for years, to just like celebrate color,
Mm-hmm.
celebrate the space of the canvas, to basically find harmony between the first lines that you do and then see how the image kind of constructs itself. And usually from like the first stroke, it's already kind of in motion what the rest of it will end up being,
Mm-hmm.
because each stroke has to be sympathetic to that first one. And it's just a pursuit of, if there was something that was a little bit out where a brush just kind of strayed off a little bit, well, that becomes a feature then. And you work around that and you bring that back into alignment. You bring it back into this kind of cohesion and this feeling. And then you experience it on psychedelics and you're like, oh, I'm a real
Mm-hmm.
artist now, right? Okay, so like there is this like validation from the entheogens to basically say, right, okay, that is interacting on that level. And a few entity encounters as well have kind of validated this idea of art having some kind of relevance and significance on another level, right?
Yeah.
My painting teacher, Amanda Sage, big up Amanda from the Vision Train, she's a hero. um, she speaks a lot to, at the end of all time, paintings are already done, right? We're just kind of filling in the blanks in the meantime, right? um, and
It's
I
like
didn't get.
that like idea that, like, every idea that we, come up with, like, those ideas already exist. It's like us being able to tap into the frequency of
Yeah,
that idea.
yeah,
So then, like, it feels
absolutely.
like it's our idea, but like it, like the idea was already there into the universe. We're now the ones bringing it into like the three-dimensional world.
Right, and then that's what the book became, right?
Hmm.
So that was very much a case of, following the channel in when it came to the writing process, expanding that out, and like noticing through my sketchbook where I was like, oh, there's a narrative here. Ah, what are these places? I've been thinking about entities in a painting, right? I was painting these towers, and then I was just imagining, right, that these entities would use it as some real place in imaginal space. And I was like, right, well, through our perception, we create these imaginal places, right?
Hmm.
But also the entities, we also create those. And within animism, you ascribe a life force or some kind of substance to each of these things. It's alive to its own parameters, within its own realm. And all of a sudden, it started to take on this whole other aspect of like, oh, isn't that interesting? And just so following that curiosity. And at first I was doing quite dark looking ones because that's kind of the style within the tattooing, that people want that edgy kind of dark black heavy stuff.
Hmm.
And then but in my sketchbook it was like, I'm going to make the Compassion Motel for all
Yeah.
friendly aliens, and any extraterrestrial lost in thought space, you're welcome here. And
Yeah, I mean, like, throughout the book, I'll just say that, one, thank you so much for sending me like a copy for me to be able to go through and get an idea of what you actually uh, helped conduit. Well, I'll say, rather than create.
yeah, thank you.
But you've created it like an entire world of, you know different entities and beings and structures
Yeah,
for, just, our imaginations to like inhabit, and
right.
it's so fucking cool.
it, it's just fascinating to me. There's a couple of controversial bits there as well, because when you start playing around with these ideas, it infers and kind of allows you to think about other things in a different way, right? Like, what is religion apart
Hmm.
from a collection of images and a mental kind of path to get somewhere, and then your agreed prescribed way of getting there yourself? So isn't that an action of the imagination, and then acts of contrition to work towards your own imagination? Like, so is your afterlife dependent on your belief? Kind of like your health is based on your belief with placebo,
Yeah, I mean, like, I mean, placebo works. Like, statistically, placebo
Right.
works. There's a
Yeah.
reason for that. It's like when like manifesting, for example, like that's just a placebo effect at play. Like, you are truly believing that this is going to happen, so subconsciously everything in your being is working to make that thing happen.
Yeah. Ah. Yeah, that's a really good, like, I didn't think about it on that kind of like larger scale. I tend to think placebo in terms of like little bodily thing, but like, yeah, it really is that, and like I have noticed reality shifting around, you know, just the force of will, and just like the vibrancy of an idea that you can hold, like with the shop that I built, right? I had
Hmm.
a very clear vision of that, right? And when I started, it was just me, my partner, and my apprentice. And by the end of the project, there were 6 of us,
Mm.
and it was just like, it's interesting how just a strong intention and just a belief, and just like how that can really make action possible, so um, yeah, thank you so much for considering the book. I know it's a bit of a, like, I've fixed the grammar a little bit since the version you've got. I've been kind of reading it back a little bit because I'm not a writer. I enjoy writing. I enjoy waxing lyrical. I enjoy reading, and
Hmm.
you know, I feel like there's not any kind of occult scholars or anybody that is kind of interested in those type of worlds probably won't find anything revolutionary apart from the idea of actually, here's a technique of building into it, right? So this
Yeah.
idea of entities, this idea of, the imaginal depth psychology, all of these things are like within our community, I think, within a kind of the same wheelhouse of ideas. But
Hmm.
this idea that like through actually painting and drawing something, and and our shared collective perception of it, that we inter this into the imaginal space. So what can we build? And then the book itself, it becomes a live experiment, right? So as you're looking at it and you're looking at the pictures, you're interring it into the imagination dimension in that moment.
Yeah.
right? So then let's check in at the end of time, right? Is there going to be a place? Who knows? Like, isn't that an interesting little thing to play? And that was the other aspect of it, the mental space that it affords you, right? To just hold ideas, right?
Yeah.
To just, you don't have to take it all super seriously.
Yeah,
You
for the
can,
sake of holding them, like just because like let's just see what happens.
right? And see how it interacts with other input that goes in. And I think that is probably a very good way of holding a lot of this kind of worldview, because it bears very little in relation to, you know, tangible, physical, normal reality,
Hmm.
and I wish it didn't, which is why I was so grateful for our meditation. You brought a little bit of that into my physical reality, right?
Hmm.
But I operate very matter of fact. I've got bills to pay. I've got a family to raise. Like everything. Like we met at a specific time this evening. Like we
Yeah.
need that kind of structure, right? But to have a place where you can like intentionally depart from that and to just hold these ideas
Hmm.
has just been very healing. Especially when it, like, I was saying about missing my son, right?
Hmm.
One of the exercises is you develop like your mental room within this. It's like your workhouse, it's like where you first build an environment for you to feel comfortable in. And one of the things in that room for me is this it's a photo frame with every person I will ever meet. The higher self version of Joe is, they're all in there. It's like, almost like a Rolodex photo frame kind of thing. But my son is in there, right? So if I miss him, I can see him, you know,
Yeah.
and to be able to just like love you, mate, in a real way that like I can hold my grief in a safe place that doesn't intrude into the outside world, and that was like a real benefit, right? And so that aspect of it kind of got written into it, and yeah, and like I think there's one other like main theme apart from building these worlds and to speak to the different ideas it brings together, and it's just this idea of liberty. you know um Carl Hart's work towards cognitive liberty's been amazing, with the
Hmm.
Cognitive Freedom Initiative as well, that they're working with the High Fee Leagues guys. So there's like some really amazing steps being put forward by Reggie and Mary there. But it's really interesting to kind of see how um, people are just, they've had enough. We've had enough, right? I'm a second generation head. My dad was in prison when I was born for a minor cannabis misdemeanor. I didn't
Hmm.
know him until I was 5, right? How can you say that taking a person into jail for half an ounce of cannabis is worth that trauma?
Yeah.
It's not. It's not. And I'm fucking sick of it, to be honest, mate. Do you know what, like, we've all lived under this for a good while, and the strangest thing is when somebody that has lived from inside that and has felt that all of their life, to go to Amsterdam, right?
Hmm.
And you walk off that plane, and it's like this weight is just
Yeah.
lifted off your shoulders. You get to go visit this amazing cosmopolitan city where people are respectful, and it's clean and it's nice and beautiful, and the arts are incredible. The best graffiti artists in the world go there to spray. It's such an amazing hub. And then you get back on the gangway, back onto the plane, and you're like,
You're like,
hello,
oh
back,
shit. Does
you
it
know.
does it like does it become more noticeable after you go somewhere else and experience like what that true liberty is actually like? Like, does it now weigh on you even more being back home?
100%. And this is one of the things like that I'm trying to become a little bit more active about this with, is to be able to engage conversations from that point. Come to Amsterdam. Come and see
Yeah.
what the big deal is. It's not a big deal. Do you want to be left behind? Do you want to be left in a place that is just like, all the progressive nations of the world are having a better relationship with these things? And I'm not saying decriminalization and legalization for everyone. I really like the principles of the Cognitive Freedom Initiative, right?
Hmm.
Health benefits, spiritual work. If you subject yourself to a health assessment, if it's just for your own recreational stuff, just so that you know I'd like it to not even have that as well. Don't get me
Yeah,
wrong. Right?
I'm all for decrim. That's
Right.
that's my biggest thing. And
Oh,
so like I live in Denver, Colorado.
yeah.
Colorado is one of the only states right now that statewide these substances are all decriminalized. Like I can't get in trouble for possessing, I can't get in trouble for using, I can't get in trouble for gifting it to somebody else.
Yeah.
So like we are protected, and I'm pretty sure it's written into the state constitution now that that like we are protected to use these substances and be able to have a relationship with them, which is, I mean, incredibly important.
Yeah.
Like one of the reasons why I moved here to begin with. And again, like this is not the norm though. Like
Yes.
I very much understand that. Like this was not the norm when I lived in Chicago, when I lived in Ohio, even
Yeah.
when I go back to California, where California people are definitely a lot more open to it. But you know, there's still always like, oh shit, the government's watching, I can get in trouble for this. Whereas now, because we have those initiatives in place here where it's decriminalized, we can start having organizations that are focused on true, genuine harm reduction. And
Exactly.
harm reduction services in a place where it's still criminalized
Yeah.
is really, really hard to get around and really, really hard to deal with.
Yeah. And that's exactly what we see. We still see violent crime based off of the sale of drugs in illicit ways.
Mm-hmm.
If it was just taken out of the hands of criminal organizations by having safe ways that you could get access to it. I love the initiative that they had in the States with Dance Safe, being able to test your substances. We actually had that in motion. It's like a rave venue that we have in Bristol. And the first time I saw it, I was like, we're really getting there. And that was 7 years ago. And it's like, we're not really getting, you know what I mean?
It's like we haven't made progress since then, but still a good start.
It's available and it's there. And like, it's been a long time since I've seen somebody who's got a job, who keeps their shit together, since somebody like that has been caught and prosecuted. Do you know what I mean? But there's still this fact that like you're a criminal, right? You can't do certain things. You can get looked down on by a certain way, and we can't have that open dialogue anymore. And I'm just ready for that conversation to just be a little bit more elevated and to participate to try and really help that. Yeah. So
yeah.
But I think we're going to have to go down the route of, rather than just blanket open because of how conservative many people are over here. I think the first generation of people kind of proven that we can be responsible. That I'm happy to submit myself and to go through some type of licensing, because one of the cognitive freedom initiatives is safe use for artistic practice, spiritual practice. It's not just health, and I think that's they're talking about health. The antidepressant studies with psilocybin that they did in Imperial College London, it's 15 years treatment resistant with an over 40% like total switch around.
Yeah.
Like
it's amazing. But like the thing is too, is that all of those different aspects of like being able to be more artistic, more creative, being able to, treat mental health challenges, like they're all related. Like it's not like they are in these true separate silos. It's like the ability to be more expressive and be more creative leads to a lot less mental health issues because you don't feel trapped.
Right. And this is it. And actually, a lot of the people that responded very well with the mental health stuff, it's proven that they had more of the mystical type experiences. So, and that's something that Amanda Fielding from the Beckley Foundation has been very keen to make sure doesn't get left out of the dialogue, as well as others. But she's the one that, she's a hero. Like I actually messaged the Beckley Foundation recently because as I'm starting to get myself out there a little bit more and be quite explicit about my former substance use. I want to engage the mature, well thought out voices from our community and bring those into the dialogue, so that even on the home level, like my local art community, I've got a talk in June now. I'm going to go present my work, talk about psychedelics, tattooing, and visionary art, and it's going to blow a lot of their minds. A lot of them are very conservative, older people. I'm younger than all of them by about 20 years.
Damn.
So to be able to be like, right, we've got a vote of confidence from the Beckley Foundation, and look at this. They have been in the game for a long time, and we are very concerned about safety. These are the protocols that we use, and it's done in this. It's not, it's not just extremism. We're not just going crazy with things or just trying to dish it out to kids. It's very measured and it's respectful. And please, have a little look. I'm a nice person. Approach me. Come and
ask questions. Like start the dialogue. It's just based on what you're saying. It seems like it's still very much like a taboo thing to even really talk about openly, like
Yeah,
at
fully.
this point.
Well, actually, this podcast now, like I said, this is like my first thing getting out there, right?
Damn.
Um, and
When is
from
the book officially getting released?
I'm waiting on. I've got a meeting with a publicist on the
Okay.
first week of February, so
Okay.
she's got strategy and all that. But she's a hero as well, right? So, but she lives in Canada, and but it's all pretty much decriminalized where she is as well. So,
Yeah,
I
because I
mean,
mean, I was surprised that like and I hope I'm not spoiling too much, but like towards the beginning of the book, you talk about like your use of psychedelics in the help of creating your book and creating your worldview, and you give people resources, which like I thought was like absolutely awesome. Like you say it in a very like matter of fact way, like this is
yeah.
just it, like not in a way of like trying to like tiptoe around it, which I thought was really really good.
Yeah, I don't want to be an apologist for that. And like, we need to start like communicating as if like, what, you're really back there, like we need to be in that mental headspace and not under that assumption that people need to be coddled into this. No, that's
Mm-hmm.
how it is. And now it's on you to catch up because we've legitimized ourselves as a community.
Yeah,
So
exactly. It shouldn't it's no longer our job to have to like prove our worth to you. Now
yeah,
at this point, like if you don't understand, like you're either just never gonna do it or
yeah.
like you're gonna do the research yourself.
Yeah, right. And I get it. Like, we have got one of the heaviest kind of media establishments in the world, in Britain, right? We have got the lowest level of trust in our media than any nation in the world. Like, that's a
Mm-hmm.
fact. Like, that's like tested. And so as a result, we have like lots of varying angles where some people come really hard on certain things, right? So I don't really blame a lot of people for their prejudices, because it's much easier to blame drugs for the issue than the dire social circumstances. There's a lot of unemployment over here. Like, house prices are crazy. I'm sure you have it the same yourself.
Well, I have a question for you that you may or not know the answer to. Because as you said earlier, you're not a historian, but so like I know that obviously in the United States, it was in like the late '60s when we actually criminalized psychedelics. Was like were you guys before us, after us? Was it right around the same time that like you guys are just like, well, America did it, we're just gonna follow suit? Like, would you happen to know when that was?
There was a specific guy I was reading about him the other day. I can't for the life, but he made it his mission to actively go into the United Nations and then put that on the rest of the world. So it was in the
Gotcha.
United Nations resolution that other people adopted. I think it wasn't long after that.
Okay.
But there are some variances, like in the States. You've got use of peyote for religious use, and
Mhm.
we don't have that. We can't. There's no
Yeah,
spiritual.
we have what's called the Religious Freedom Act,
Yeah, right.
which that being said has definitely come with, I know, like its own host of challenges of actually being like legitimized by certain organizations that have tried to basically use these substances under that guise.
Yeah.
But we at least do have that in place.
Yeah, like, and I think that's such an amazing starting point, because if you're serious enough and you kind of stick it out, you could probably get to where you wanted to go through that line of inquiry if you're persistent, I think.
Oh, there's a lot of psychedelic churches that are forming now, like here in the U.S., like all over the U.S.,
Yeah.
mainly using psilocybin. And so, the traditional, I think, when people think of like the Religious Freedom Act, was for like the Native Americans, using peyote, and things like that. But now it's we realize, oh shit, there is this loophole, so to say, in the system that allows us to say, hey, this is part of our religious
Yeah.
offering, which, to be honest,
Yes, it is.
I've never want, like, I feel the absolute closest to God when I'm on a psychedelic substance. Like, fact, there's nothing that even compares.
Yeah. Uh, it just strips everything away, doesn't it? Like, I remember seeing the Golden Gates the first time, and it was just kind of, it was on that trip with the tracing paper pad, and I kind of lied down and I just saw it, and I was like, oh, there's another world up there. Oh, oh, this is real. Oh, right, okay. So that was the first time I'd gone in and surrendered. The
Mm-hmm.
first time I really like let go, and I think from then I've had fits and starts. Where like it'll be like really productive for a little while, and then it'll just kind of go like I'm almost wanting it too much, and then it
Yeah.
disappears. You know how it is, and it's like, no,
Oh man, the
you need to be
second
in
the
the real
second
world.
you want something so bad is when it becomes just the absolute most difficult to attain, and like, the entire universe works against you, and like you that's when you have to just fucking surrender and be like, maybe this isn't for me. And then, maybe the universe will be like, nah, just kidding. We try to make sure you still wanted
Yeah,
it.
and it'll call you, and there'll be like a little time when you get that intuition, right? And I
Mhm,
think building a relationship with intuition has been a really interesting thing for the book. It's like, rather than second guessing like little ideas and hunches toward working towards something, um, really understanding, like, there's an archetype, right? It's Harahel, the angel of the library, right? Which is like, when you're looking for something, it's that intuition where, you're looking for that Lego piece amongst 1,000, and you just find that one Lego piece. So we've got this aspect of our reducing valve that kind of sifts what's important, and like actually thinking about that a little bit and giving it a name, and just being able to, like, okay, let's develop a good relationship with this kind of inner force of my, of my
mhm.
consciousness. And yeah, it gets quite trippy at times, even in waking life. The amount of coincidences and little things that kind of come through from that. It just seems like we're in the right place. So, but yeah, I've one piece of news anyway, and one commitment that I would like to share with you. And
Absolutely.
but I, as of today, am going totally teetotal. I have decided, until it's legal in this country again,
Uh-huh.
um, so that I can be more vocal on my socials, and this, that, and the other. I I need to get out of my house, right? I've got a child, I've got
Mhm,
things, so I've always had that fear, and like that's been my excuse where I haven't been like defending people that go down for drug charges, right?
mhm,
So Professor Carl Hart's book actually says, when a middle class white people going to start defending for the lowest common denominator when we know all drug laws are bad, right?
mhm.
So it's like actually showing up for the crackheads who, like, didn't really fucking come
Yeah,
through.
I mean, it's all it's all a systemic issue. It's not like, oh, that individual is a bad apple because they decided to do crack and ruin their lives. Like, no, it's the system never once supported them in the first place, and then they happen to also use that substance and then also go down for it. But again, if the
And
rich
it
white
probably
people
helped,
do it, it's it's
right?
it's completely fine.
Yeah. So I was just really inspired by, especially listening to his audiobook as well.
Hmm.
And it's just like, I am fed up of coddling this. There is a basic liberty issue here, and that's kind of, you know, I if I can be more effective in that conversation, especially coming up to starting to do my own talks, and like with all the information in the book, I want to be very open about this stuff, and maybe I can be of service. And I
Hmm.
feel like, while I've still got it in the house, you know, think of it another way, right? Brian Murarescu, right? He wrote this, The Immortality Key, and it was all about like ancient drugs in,
Hmm.
inspiring, early religion, right?
Hmm.
And then using archaeochemistry to find these residues of these psychedelic compounds all around. And but one of the things that makes his arguments so compelling to the wider community, and for straight people, you can actually refer people to this guy, is because he's a good Christian that has never done drugs,
Yeah.
right? So it's like this guy that is saying that this could well be the root of
Hmm.
religion. The fact that he isn't a participant in that, and he has
Yeah.
remained objective, allows him to have this autonomy within that, and that's kind of interesting. And
Hmm.
maybe after 10 years of, I've always been smoking weed, right?
Hmm.
And I'm going to light up tonight, good and proper, after this. Um, but then after that, that's me done, and it's been
So
it's
when you
been
say like totally clean, like you mean like no alcohol, no,
yeah. I'm not a big drinker anyway, to be
okay,
honest. Like,
no entheogens of any kind, no cannabis.
I think if I was out picking my own mushrooms, I would eat them as I went, because
Yeah,
it's actually illegal to prepare mushrooms in the UK, but not to eat them as you go.
gotcha. Okay, that's
It's,
a fun loophole.
yeah, right. So you can go out into the fields, but I just think that, and it's not just that as well. Like, one of the other ones that kind of comes back for me is the Coke, right? And it's like, I'm not averse, because I've been around it since I was young. I've
Hmm.
used it to gain extra time in my life to the tune of thousands of hours,
Hmm.
right? and I use it with purpose. And it's never been to I and I feel like for me now, like I actually need to draw a line under that chapter of my life as well. So
Hmm.
like I'm I'm kind of assessing my use, being
Yeah.
able to kind of get a little bit of perspective. And what, I am sharper when I'm straight. You know,
Yeah.
I went to study in Vienna with Amanda, my teacher I was on about, the Academy of Visionary Art in Vienna.
Hmm.
And when I was there, the first month, I didn't touch anything, and I was just so lucid and healthy. I was doing
Hmm.
yoga, I was meditating. I really meditate, even if I've had a bit of weed, because I feel like I'm cheapening it and I'm depriving myself of a clean connection,
Yeah.
which is it's a strange concept because like I have a great relationship with these substances, but then there's a part of me that's sometimes like, yeah, but can you do it straight as well? Like
Yeah.
how much you prepared to dedicate yourself to this? Like it gives me pause for thought, and it's enough to be like, you know what, I'm ready to step up in service of like trying to do better. And you know what, maybe at the same time I'll kind of develop a better relationship with all of the extra things that I've been kind of participating in. So
I think it's always interesting, and it's always good to be questioning our relationship with the substances around us, and even with like the food we eat and like things
yeah,
like that, like everything that we are consuming. Like we are constantly consuming, whether it is a fucking podcast, whether it's social media, whether it's food, like the air we breathe and all that. Like it's important that we are aware of the things that are going into our body. And like for example, I mean, I just did dry January, and also like no nicotine for the month of January. It's now January 31st. I'm happy to say I was able to do that. It's honestly, it was pretty easy for me to do no alcohol. I rarely ever drink anymore.
yeah,
The nicotine though, that was one that it just always keeps coming back for me, just because like everybody has a little vape and they taste so good, and man, it's phenomenal. I love nicotine. I'm not going to pretend like I don't,
oh,
but it was, I think I had a an unhealthy relationship with it, because like anytime it was around, I was like, oh well, it's there, so like I'll do it.
yeah,
And I think it's something that I'm going to continue with for sure. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's what I have to do for the rest of my life. It's
yeah,
like
right,
right now in this moment, this is what feels right for me. And like I have felt more clean headed. Like I felt healthier. I felt like I can take deeper breaths. I can run at the gym more, and
yeah,
and things like that. And so like for now, this feels like the right decision for me. And that's not to say that something can change in the future, which it obviously can. Like we don't have to be so convicted in ourselves that like we go off and create this whole new identity and like try to attach and cling on to that just because we said we would, like a year ago, or whatever. It's constantly learning from our own bodies.
that's it. Like, and I've been getting the hint as well. There's also a little bit of that. I need to sleep a little bit more. I need to be a little bit more present. And I really think it will be better of service on the whole for the decriminalization thing. Like one of the things that really eggs me on is this idea that the first time that I do it after my self-imposed abstinence, one gets decriminalized. You
Oh
know,
man, be so sweet.
and to just and if it's not like that, I'm fed up. To be honest, I'm fed up of
Yeah,
being a criminal, mate. I'm a good person. I love
yeah.
people. Do you know? Like I'm not being
I
big
mean,
headed.
the whole idea of like being labeled as a criminal is so funny, because again, like what you get labeled for as a criminal where you are right now, all you have to do is change your location geographically, and all of a sudden you're not a criminal. So like, were you ever really a criminal to begin
Oh,
with?
and this is the thing about Amsterdam, right?
Yeah,
Just like you just shed that criminality when you get off the plane, and it's just like, flipping out, It
yeah,
just, but yeah. So, and I think that's a really like good segue into my final point about the book, right? So, one of the common driving factors throughout all of it, and I think you've probably seen, is it mentions the case of Julian Assange. Now, I was in London earlier in the year, last year, probably April, May kind of time, and there was an exhibition detailing all of these kind of human rights injustices, and filling in about his story. All these different artists, Ai Weiwei, Vivienne Westwood, all these great, like, it was organized by apolitical.org.
Hmm.
And this guy, he's responsible for publishing WikiLeaks. He was in the Ecuadorian embassy for 8 years. Confined in there. They were giving him some kind of refuge. Um, they kind of not they didn't really turn on him, but there was a lot of pressure for him to leave the embassy. He resisted arrest because he was going to be extradited to the States
Hmm.
for a 175-year sentence. Right? He resisted arrest, which should have been an 11-month sentence, and he's now spent 5 years in Belmarsh, right? Belmarsh prison. 23 hours a day is one of the most high security prisons in the UK. And he's just there 23 hours a day in solitary confinement. So this idea of giving somebody like that somewhere to go, you know, and it was something that really kind of kept with me. And I know that this is a work of whimsy and probably couldn't touch the sides on like the severity and realness of what he's going through right now.
Hmm.
But I felt like there was a way that I might have some way of just being lighthearted and alleviating.
Why does his story of what happened to him, like, why does that touch you so much?
I think my dad went to the Occupy movement in 2008. I've been around a lot of this conversation all my life in terms of understanding how the world works, and I've been following it for nearly 20 years. Right? You always get these conspiraloons or these conspiracy theorists. So I'm not going to go too far into my ideas about how the world works.
Hmm.
But when there is a flagrant breach of like law, which this Australian citizen, he's not even under the jurisdiction of America. This
Hmm.
Australian citizen is being tried for a crime that is only suitable for American citizens because it's the Espionage Act, right?
Hmm.
Now, there's no way of saying that there's an ulterior motive or a grander motive like against the Espionage Act. If you get caught with it, you're getting it, right? You can't talk your way out of it. It's just one of those types of laws, right? But in the meantime, other publishing houses like the New York Post, the Times in the UK, all of these, the major establishments have printed a lot of what he said in WikiLeaks
Hmm.
themselves. Where are they?
Yeah.
And where's the support for that? And at this moment, like, there's a big question mark about freedom of speech, right? And this guy basically typifies like why journalists won't hold power to account,
Hmm.
because otherwise you'll end up like that. And if that can be allowed to happen to him, who else isn't speaking their mind? Who else has
Yeah.
got information? And just as like as an icon that they can hold up there, Hillary Clinton herself literally said he needs to go down, otherwise we're all going to hang, because of how much she's implicated, right? And like, I'm not bullying her, but that's just pretty much a quote. I don't know word for word, but that was the sentiment, right?
Yeah.
So, um,
Like, well, I don't honestly know too much about him, to be honest. Like, I remember because like I was you know 11 years old
yeah,
when I think all of that was happening, and like I heard like a little bit. Oh, there's this dude Julian Assange, and like there's this thing called WikiLeaks that's giving away all our secrets or some shit like that. I still don't even know if that was the basis of it, but
yeah, right. So just
it yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Tell me, like, what exactly actually was like WikiLeaks? Like, what was the whole deal behind that?
it released war crimes.
Okay, got it.
So Chelsea Manning, she
Hmm.
was an op, and one of the biggest things is like their release of the way that they were treating people in Iraq and Afghanistan. Literally torturing people, extrajudicial killings. And like at the exhibition, there was a helicopter scene where they're literally just shooting down Reuters journalists, right? And it's like plain as day. And like we need to start holding everyone to the same standard of law, right? Otherwise, it's not worth any. As we move forward, and I know that's idealistic, and I know
Yeah.
it is idealistic, but having somebody that stands as somebody that represents where the movement is right now, like he typifies the frustration, right? He's literally living in that for 23 hours a day and on his own, right?
Hmm.
So I know I've gone on a little bit about him, but he was very much a big inspiration to like help him develop a book that would give some mental freedom and liberation. So, yeah,
Yeah, to somebody that doesn't have the physical freedom that we all get to enjoy on a day-to-day basis.
yeah, right.
It's
So,
it's it's just like I'm thinking about that a lot, and like I'm kind of just sitting on like what that must feel like, and also the idea that somebody can be put, behind, somebody could essentially be fucking placed in jail for telling the truth, for literally just exposing what's like already there, because it's like the whole idea of treason, for example. Like treason is like, I'm pretty sure one of the worst crimes that you can commit, at least like here in America. Like if you get caught for any treasonous act, like you are fucked. And that's so funny to me because like these are all made up rules. Like if you're if
right?
you're truly this great power that you claim to be, you should welcome anybody checking all the things that you do, because you're like, look, I'm doing a good job. Like I want you to see that too. But if you feel the need to hold people down and, essentially silence the people, or else you're gonna look bad, well, maybe silencing the people isn't the fucking issue. Like maybe you should
Right.
take a look at the actions that you're doing, and like, all of these killings are justifiable because of what these terrorists have done to us. But like it's all a zero sum game at the end of the
Right.
day. There's never going to be a winner
Just
ever.
ceasefire, right?
Yeah.
Like we're living in the age of the internet, right? I don't understand how people just like people in power haven't really cottoned on that they can't get away with the same shit that they used to.
But the thing is that they still
They
do. Like
do. I
that's
know.
the crazy thing, is like we can literally see it plain as
Yeah,
day,
I
and
know.
yet like it still doesn't stop them.
I
Like that's the most ridiculous thing, is that like
yeah,
because like the attention economy that we're in
yeah.
will always find a way to divert attention elsewhere, and it
Well,
works, and it
it's
works
also
so well.
it is that, and that could be the easy thing to blame. But I think the more difficult barrier would be who would legislate the corrupt, like against the corrupt. Sorry, that's
Yeah.
my dog.
Oh, that's fun.
My dog Babs. But that's it, right? Who writes the legislation,
Yeah.
right? And who gets it enacted into Congress, right? It's unless there are very robust anti-corruption measures that are brought in,
Hmm.
there isn't going to be much of a shift. But when you've got, for example, what's going on in the Middle East at the moment, it seems like there's some of the bad actors are going to get pulled into the International Court of Justice for the first time ever, right?
Hmm.
And that's a move forward, right? And it's like, okay, well, yeah, fair enough. There's a lot of whataboutism going on, right?
Hmm.
Oh, well, who are they to do that? Well, there's
Yeah.
15 international high court judges that are presiding on that decision to take that forward, not just the country that took that charge forward.
Hmm.
So you can't just denigrate the whole argument because of that one rogue nation that is just a bit, they've got their own issues, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, yeah, we'll get to the whataboutism after that, right? Let's just do one at a time. We'll have triage, which is the longest going like conflict that we've got, and then we'll slowly work backwards through the other injustices, and we'll get there eventually, brother.
it's
Leaning
it's
in.
so hard, because it's like, when does it end? Like is it like, is that even worth it to truly go through all of the systems that we do have in place? Because the way that I see it is, I want to change the systems completely. I think that the systems clearly are broken in a
Yeah,
way. They're not all broken. Some, like, we do need order. We need a way to
yeah,
keep balance and keep order, but doing it with severe punishment and silencing and ignoring because you're scared that they're going to attack you, like, it doesn't work. And I understand that it's more complicated and it's more nuanced than that.
of course,
and
of
and
course.
here's why I love psychedelics, and we're gonna bring it back there, is like, every single trip I've ever had, the idea of love and connection always comes into play and always comes into my mind, because that is the core of our humanity. And I absolutely do not believe that if you just give everybody psychedelics, the world's problems will go away. They're going to get so much worse if we do that. because,
Yeah, I believe that.
but if we properly educate people about these substances and give people the cognitive liberty to choose if they want to use them for themselves, when you just have like, we just need to get to the tipping point. It's not everybody, but it's getting to the tipping point. I think that psychedelics can help us get to the tipping point where it
Yes.
will be the norm, and there will be too many people advocating for genuine community and love and trying to actually solve the problems
Yes.
rather than silencing the people that they don't like.
Yes. 100. Right on, brother. Yes. You and it's so liberating to have that clarity and to just, you know what, as long as we each lean in to
Yeah.
like goodness, and if we have come to a certain conversation or that we're aware of and that is in our
Mm-hmm.
wheelhouse to talk about, there is a responsibility to that knowledge, you know.
Yeah.
And
But
then
what I will say at the same time, and this is where, certain people might not necessarily agree, is that I very purposely choose not to speak up about all of these injustices that are happening all around us, and diverting my attention there, because they're always happening. They're always going to happen. And if I
yes,
start to put all of my attention on what's going on in the Middle East to being like, guys, this is really bad. We need to, boycott whoever the fuck.
where's
Like
the conversation for
that's like we're gonna end up in the exact same loop.
yeah,
Like
there's a lot of people doing that, yeah,
I'm trying to stay my course of doing what I think is right to simply just spread the core root message of, guys, we can all truly do this if we try. Like if we believe that we can, and pointing out every single little tiny injustice that's happening around us is it's not going to get us any further. It's just going to end up taking a step back.
yeah. As like you're right in that it can be controversial to have that opinion these days, but I think that I have a lot of respect for that as well, and that you're clear about that. You know, um, I like the idea of joy as an act of resistance as well,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So to be able to enjoy life is also living it, you know, and it's like if I ever post anything like that, it's usually on my story, right?
Yeah.
My feed is for work and for beautiful things that I like creating, and you know, I'll share my story because it's the least I could kind of do, especially like as a British citizen. Like we signed the whole of that region to another nation. It's like it was never ours to give, right?
Yeah.
So and coming from the son of an anarchist, I have a sense of responsibility to that within that. So I feel like as an artist as well, that like we can each speak from our own thing. So that's where my art can touch into. And I think that as a podcaster, your art is very much like, okay, how can I be the rod in the middle that kind of is able to relate to all these and then develop a more balanced worldview and encourage conversation between these different factions so
Yeah.
that we can, you know, follow those psychedelic
Yeah. How do we
principles.
how do we
You know
how
what
do we have the conversation and without trying to kill each other? Like
I
that's
mean?
it, because too many people can't have the conversation without letting their emotions get the best of them, and without being able to take that step back and be like, let me think about that. I don't have to answer you right away. I
100%.
get time to think and process and actually see how that makes me feel,
Mm.
and then tap into that feeling and seeing, well, why do I feel that way, rather than feeling and reacting immediately.
And that's where the meditation comes in again.
It always comes full circle.
Yes, brother. Thank you so much for this conversation. It's been wonderful.
Thank you so much, Joe. This has been absolutely amazing. I'm so blessed that we were just able to do this and that you came into my life. So thank you.
I'm going to get out to the States soon, man. Like I've been talking about, it's one of the things I would love to do as part of with the book, right? If I can sell enough books, I can get a flight over and spend a couple of weeks out there. And, you know, there's a couple of festivals I'd like to do. And I've got loads of friends from the Vision Train that, you know, little shout out to the Vision Train, by the way, 24/7-hour live art jam for visionary artists. That's around the clock, any given time. There's usually somebody on there like stewarding with music and that. And that's been going since COVID for 4 years, well, 3.5 years or whatever it is now. And it still continues to be an amazing source of very kind, loving, compassionate, visionary psychedelics heads and thinkers who just support each other in the mission of art. And yeah, power to Amanda Sage and Alicia and all the other conductors of that amazing community. So,
and where can people find you?
if you go to joescustomtattoo.com, that's just my website, and then from there you can find, you know, my Instagram, Joe's Custom Tattoo. My old shop used to be Joe's Custom Tattoo Studio, and it's kind of stuck. And
Yeah.
through having different bands which would shift name all the time, like, oh, new band. I was like, I'm just going to stick a name, and eventually the name will represent me, and that'll do. So it's been Joe's Custom Tattoo forever, and I think that's what it'll probably be till I die. Like.
Beautiful.
And
Thank you so much.
It could be cooler. It could be like the Psychedelics Legend, or whatever.
Uh-huh.
You're welcome. Sorry, I butted in on your outro there. Sorry, mate.
Oh, you're fine. This isn't planned in any way, shape, or form. Thank you so much. I love you, man. And
love you,
until we talk again.
Peace.
Peace. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you for being you. Thank you for being here. Just thank you. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have any questions or want to get in contact with me, feel free to shoot me a DM or reach out at tripsittingblog@gmail.com. And yeah, if you want to collab or do anything like that, or interested in sponsoring, hit me up. I love you all, and I'll see you next episode.